once you expose yourself to these ideas in any form, once you allow them to challenge your paradigm, right, then you can begin to really craft intentionally with a strategy and a plan in mind. You can craft the best possible version of yourself. You can craft the best possible mind that you could have. You basically have to be mainstream, like liberal, if you want to make it on those platforms, as far as I can tell. Yeah. I follow a few conservative people on Instagram, and they're always talking about how their pages are getting banned and how...
Do you consider me conservative?
No.
Right? That's good.
I don't think so.
No,
I mean, are you?
No, I don't even fucking know. I just don't even think about it.
Me neither. I'm very in the middle, but I think Ryan's ideas are certainly not mainstream.
Oh, no. You know? He's like liberal, but he
is more liberal.
Yeah.
But he
goes deeper into it.
He does.
You know?
And he challenges, and I like it, and he challenges the corruption, and he challenges the assumptions, you know. And so anything that rocks the boat, I think they go, we might get found out or something.
Yeah, and it's funny because I had 300 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm wondering if someone at like Facebook listened to it. Like, I would just wonder how that process goes down.
Or if it's all automatic. I don't know how that works.
If it's automatic, that's even scarier because you have one tag that just, that
could eliminate an entire 3 hours of useful footage.
Yeah.
That is,
Anyway, we're recording.
Okay, hi.
How you doing, Chris?
Good, it's nice to see you.
So it's been a freaking hiatus. I'm so glad you're the first one back on.
Yeah.
I have some notes here, but I just want you to talk, and I'll ask you the best questions I can ask.
I like talking.
And it's kind of funny because I've been going through some shit, personal life, work, and I started questioning, like, why am I doing this podcast? Like, it was really hard for me to keep going with it, be persistent with it, kind of going through some of the shit I was going to. And one of the notes that you texted me about that you wanted to talk about was, why is philosophy important? Which is like, that's one of those things that's a really, like, why the fuck is philosophy important? It's one of those things. Why is talking about ideas that I guess you can disconnect from science important? Yeah. Why is it important? I really want you to delve into that, and then whatever stuff comes up, we'll go into it. But what are your thoughts on it? I know you've been thinking about this stuff a lot.
I have. I've spent, and knowing, I'm happy to be back.
Yeah,
because
thank you.
I noticed it was like July was the last one.
It's been a while, a couple months, however long it's been. Yeah,
but that's good, fine, and here we are. But I was sort of getting ready this week thinking about, if I could sum this up, also, since my car is parked on the meter, we have to.
We have till 5:45. That's enough time.
I think you have to start with something like this. You have to start with an analysis of, what does philosophy mean? What is it? I think for some reason this seems to happen a lot. People have, I don't want to say a false assumption of what it is, but they have a sort of a misperception.
What is your definition?
Philosophy. Well, the word itself breaks down into philo and sophy, which means the love of wisdom or the love of knowledge. And so the field itself is just a study of knowledge, wisdom, insights, So if you think about it, it's like, how could anyone really have a problem with that? I know. Like, you know what? I really don't like wisdom.
It's like, so you can't have a problem with that.
I don't see that as being like a possible option.
Yeah.
I've never talked to someone and they said genuinely, I don't like wisdom.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase in my life, right?
Yeah.
I've never heard the phrase.
You're lacking wisdom if you say that.
That's right.
The problem.
I have larger concerns about you at this point now. If that, so that it's strange because if you just break it down at its most simple form, that's really all philosophy is. It's a love of wisdom. It's a love of insight. It's a thirst for knowledge. It's a thirst for progress, both social and personal. And when you realize that it can be that simple, philosophy opens up to you.
Yeah.
It opens up to you because wisdom benefits everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone knows this. I mean, I'm not saying anything that new or novel or interesting.
But it's almost forgotten.
I think so.
For a lot of people.
I think so. And one of the problems is and I totally get this, there is this association with philosophy and philosophers that they're elitist, that they're more interested in using big words and fancy language than they are about actually solving problems.
Yeah.
That the
word pretentious gets thrown around.
Very pretentious, that their head's in the clouds, it's very abstract. They just sit on their couch smoking weed and talking about how they love Nietzsche all day, those people exist.
Yeah.
Let's just start there.
Yeah.
Yes. But we don't hang out with those people.
Yeah.
Not on purpose anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah, actually, maybe sometimes.
Sometimes.
But so for certain purposes, maybe. But in general, I would actually make the claim, just like in religion, how there's people who practice it incorrectly. You know, you don't want to judge the whole religion based on those people.
Yeah.
Just like in school, there are professors that teach poorly. You wouldn't judge all of education based on those professors. I would say there are people who practice philosophy poorly.
Yeah.
And it gives the whole thing a bad name because it's not really about that. It's not really about the language you use. It's not really about how fancy your rhetoric or how poetic your speech. You know, that's like the cherry on top that sometimes can not even be a cherry. It's just kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But what it really is like I was just saying, it's a love of wisdom and knowledge. It's a pursuit that is not just seasonal. This should go throughout your whole life. You know, it's not like you just take a philosophy class and go, oh, I studied philosophy now, done, check.
Yeah.
It really is I would say it's like a lifestyle.
It's like, I mean, that's a really good way to put it. It's just one of those crazy, like philosophy really, to me, the way that I think about philosophy is that it's almost like a description of what life really is all about. Because if you take away the structures that we have, school, your job, you take away all your personal shit and you take away everything, life really is just kind of about trying to get through day to day, moment to moment, and learn from your past. Right. And it's like philosophy is like, it's like trying to, I don't know, maybe I'm bullshitting, but it's like trying to rise above and reach into like new depths and reach into grab like insights and bring it down to a way where you can like try to use it in your life or practice from it. But like you said, it has such a bad reputation for some people.
I was just talking to a few of my friends in grad school. This is the music masters that I'm doing through Cal State LA. It's a great program, and I love the cohort that I'm in. It's a small group, but we have a lot of discussions about this stuff, you know, because in college philosophy just gets brought up, you know. And I have one friend in particular who I'm very fond of. I think she's awesome, you know, very smart, very talented. But she does not like philosophy. She has this negative taste in her.
Bring her on, invite her on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. No, she would never come. So I'm not going to waste my time with that.
That's hilarious.
But I actually get her apprehension. I do. And it's like we're just talking about. And I asked her, you know, well, why do you not like philosophy? I mean, like it's wisdom, it's insight. I mean, this stuff could literally change your life by changing your mind.
Yeah.
Because it's your mind that motivates everything you do, your behaviors, your decisions, every thought pattern that you have. All of that begins here. Yeah. And philosophy is, I think, in short, a way to challenge what's up here.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's a good way to put it.
It challenges your assumptions. It challenges your presuppositions about the world. It challenges your perspectives. It challenges beliefs that you've held your whole life. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And so it's funny. So I asked her, and what she said was, well, honestly, I lived with a guy, I think lived with or was really good friends with a guy who just finished his PhD in philosophy, and he was just really annoying.
One of those guys.
You know, yeah. And I thought, you know, that's unfortunate, but I totally understand. Were I in her shoes, I would probably think it's really annoying too, right? Yeah. Where, okay, yeah, and all this guy did was just try and prove how smart he was, and he was, or whatever, and he was very just in the clouds. And, you know, it just was so hard to have a real conversation with because he was just, it was all questions is kind of how she explained it. And she's like, where's the practical? She's a very practical person, you know. And I mean, I am too. I'm a hard pragmatist, but I also am creative, and I'm also an artist, and I'm also like imaginative, and I'm thinking about things that go beyond just what's right in front of your face. So anyway, I get that, and I think a lot of people have that experience. So unfortunately, that is where I think it gets its bad rap. But
why is it important, right?
This is, so I think we have to kind of move to that. And I think what we just said is a good segue about how it challenges your assumptions. Yeah. I was thinking about this today. I was swimming in the pool and this thought just popped into my head. I don't know why. It just arose out of somewhere.
That's God talking to you.
There you go. Hey, it's the Holy Spirit. So I had a moment with myself, and I thought, nice.
Not cutting that out.
No, I think that was good. I had a moment with myself, and I remember it just hit me today. I thought, you know, there's a guarantee that I have some beliefs that are wrong.
Yeah.
There is no doubt in my mind that I have at least one belief that is wrong. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I sort of stopped swimming, and I just kind of like stared. And I thought, whoa. I've thought about this before, but that specific thought has not popped into my mind. I don't know why.
And also, like, there's I've had that thought, but there's a way that sometimes it hits you, and there's not even really a way to articulate that feeling when it hits you. And you can almost take it to like every belief I have is wrong.
Yes. There's a chance that most of my beliefs are wrong. That's scary.
And also according to who?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like, what do you mean by wrong?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you can really go there.
Yeah.
You really can.
This is actually exciting.
Yeah.
Right? So what I realized today is not necessarily today, but what was sort of what popped into my head again is this idea that we walk around every day with hundreds, probably thousands of beliefs. Some of them are totally benign, like I own a cell phone.
Yeah.
That's the most inconsequential belief. Whether that's right or wrong is not going to really rule my life, but at some point it might.
Yeah.
But all the way up to things like I believe in heaven and hell and God and whatever. I mean, these are vastly different types of beliefs, but they're all beliefs.
Yeah.
And on the spectrum of belief, you have everything from I own a cell phone to God exists and everything in between. It makes up thousands of different beliefs, from the smallest to the largest beliefs. We walk around every day with those set of beliefs known as a worldview or a philosophy that literally, like I was saying, motivates everything we do.
Yeah.
It drives our behavior. It drives our decision making. It all starts here, right? And so the reason it's important to recognize that you could have incorrect thoughts is because those incorrect thoughts will manifest themselves in reality.
Yeah.
They will manifest themselves in ways that, as Hunter said before, that leads to needless suffering.
Yeah.
Right? They may surface as suffering, right? When you are not seeing reality as it is. When
I can feel that.
Right. When you're stuck in a trap. When you are, whether that's a physical trap at work, like we were talking about, or whether that's a mental trap, whatever it is, one of the best ways to get out of that is to recognize that the trap itself may be predicated on a belief that is not founded in reality.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, again, this idea has just been blowing my mind this week. Again, just thinking about how I'm sure that right now, as I talk to you, I have beliefs that are wrong, right? And my question is, don't you want to know what they are, Kris?
Yeah. And I'm like,
don't you want to know?
I'm like, man, I've been struggling the past few months with stuff at work, and I'm like, Jesus, it's all probably just in my head. I mean, everything is in your head.
Yes.
Right?
I
mean, really.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all of it. I mean, you're a smart guy and you're very perceptive.
Yeah, so. But you can really shift your perspective in some serious circumstances, no matter how much you think the external is influencing it. There's a lot you can do mentally.
Yes.
But it's like, it's a really crazy insight to like delve into and really understand.
Well, and I think that would be kind of point number one about why philosophy is important. Because in seeking knowledge, in seeking insights from other people, especially philosophers who, by the way, were like professional thinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you basically put it like that, right? When our car is broken, usually we will bring it to a professional mechanic, someone who knows what they're doing, right? When your air conditioning breaks, you hire someone who's been working on air conditionings for their whole life, right? Or whatever. You go to people who spend their time and money and resources on those things because they're professionals, they're experts. They'll get it done way better and way faster than you will, right? You go to a therapist when you need to figure out what's going on cognitively.
Just before I forget this, I wanted to ask you, this just popped in my mind, but because you said philosophers are professional thinkers, would you consider like therapists a branch of philosophy in terms of being a professional person that can delve into the mind and it's one of those things where they seem really tied together, but they're also really separate in a lot of ways. Right.
I would say they're not necessarily intertwined, depending on the type of therapy. There are different types of therapy, and of course Hunter would be much better at explaining that. But there are different approaches to psychology and therapy. But many of the therapists and psychologists I know are using philosophy in every session.
This is such let me just let me ask you about this, because now I'm sitting here like, I love that thought, professional thinker. One question I have is how the fuck can you monetize being a professional thinker nowadays?
Right.
Then what is there in our society today, maybe aside from teachers, professors, what profession really can you like if you get a philosophy degree, aside from being a teacher,
well, first
or professor,
off, I'd say don't get a philosophy degree.
Yeah, I'm just curious because that idea of professional thinking, it's not only, that doesn't even only pertain to philosophy. No. There's so much shit online right now about transcending your limited beliefs. You have these belief systems that get ingrained into your mind, and it's 100% true that you can transcend belief systems that you've had your whole life by breaking like through those barriers, but most people never do because they don't think of thinking the way that you just described it, you know? Right. But anyway, that's just something popped in my mind.
Well, I mean, I would just say this, you know, we outsource so many things to other people who are experts in those fields, right? Many people feel like they don't have time. And I get it. I don't want to fault them for that. You know, I felt that myself too. I go through seasons, just like you do with this podcast, right? Where you literally, it's a time, it's an energy, it's a resource thing. Even though I love it, I just don't have time for that right now, right? I totally get that. I would say if you don't have time, outsource it to someone who does. So the reason that I read philosophy, the reason I find Nietzsche fascinating is because Nietzsche spent probably 50,000 more hours thinking about these things than I have.
The way you're describing this is like, this is good.
Right. So I'm just thinking like the reason I read Voltaire is because all Voltaire did was think. Like mostly, you know, he was sort of like the politician of his day, but he thought, you know, the reason that we read Plato and Socrates is because these people spent most of their waking life thinking, writing, breaking things down, doing research, talking to other smart people, and then writing it down for everyone to know.
That's right. That's a really good way to think about that.
So that they are like professional thinkers, right?
Just and you're outsourcing your own thinking.
That's right.
When you read like Nietzsche or whatever.
That's right. And what I would say is that it's okay if you don't have enough time to like read all of Plato's Republic. It's big and there's a lot of words and it's tiring, quite frankly. You know, I've not read the whole thing.
Listen to the audiobook.
That's right. You can go to the audiobook, but what you can also do is you can read a book on philosophy about Plato's Republic. Where from just a modern take, this is how this applies to you. Here are the 20 bullet points, whatever. You can go on like a podcast, 30 minutes, and there's a great one called The Philosopher's Zone. There's another one called Philosophy Bites, you know. But there's also really good long-form podcasts like we talk about. Joe Rogan's great, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris. They have great guests on, and they just talk about cool shit.
That's good.
Right?
Do you consider Joe Rogan like a modern-day philosopher?
I think so. I think he himself is outsourcing the thinking to his guests.
That's true.
And which is why he's so smart. And I wouldn't say it's why he's so smart, but it's one of the reasons why I think he is a pretty insightful and wise figure is because he brings people on who know more about these subjects than he does. And
that's something I really want to get into the groove with. You know, just thinking of myself as like. Bring someone on and just learn and soak in the knowledge. You know?
So I would say in the same way that we outsource all this other stuff, right? In the same way that we hire professional people in their fields to do things that we don't have the time, money, resources, energy to do, we could do that with our mind. We could do that with our thoughts and our beliefs. You know, it doesn't mean that you just buy one book on Nietzsche and then just believe everything he says, but it means you might buy it and you might sort through it and read, you know, I'm not even saying read every page in the book. I think people get overwhelmed with things like philosophy. Sure. It's just like
every time I've started to, it's overwhelming. Every time I've started to.
Right? Yeah. But honestly, what I've done, and I'm not saying it's the best way to do it, but I found this to be a very practical solution to that problem, is you can pick up a book from Nietzsche, from anyone, from Dostoevsky, and any of the existentialists or the postmodernists, whoever, and pick up the book and go to the chapters that just grab your attention. You know, most nonfiction works, you don't have to go through the whole thing. I mean, honestly, it's not like a fictional story where if you go to chapter 6, you're going to miss the whole plot.
I needed to hear this. You know? That's something that I'm sure there are a ton of people that struggle with that same thing, but
a lot of philosophers organize their books that way. Where it's like, okay, they're basically essays. Actually, many philosophy books started as a collection of essays.
But Beyond Good and Evil seems like that to me. That's what it is, right? It's just like each chapter or whatever is just like an insane, potent little thing of information.
Right. And so, I mean, I honestly, if I'm being honest, and I mean, I'm now getting a master's degree in philosophy, which you know, and so I'm very excited about it. But someone like me who spent all these hours studying it, I still have not been through that many full works. I would say number of full works in my life, 4 or 5. You know,
I've read all of
Plato's Republic. I've read Beyond Good and Evil. I mean, there are certain, they're like key books that I've read all the way through. You know,
what are those? Just really quick. To me, recommending what are some like key philosophy books that you would recommend to try to get through the whole thing?
Yes,
as a good foundation.
It's a good foundation. just shooting off the top of my head here, I would say Descartes' Meditations, St. Augustine's Confessions. If you want more stuff on like Christian theology and philosophy, stuff from like Meister Eckhart's really good. But just some of the basics. I mean, you can actually read books that are more introductions to philosophy, which give a lot of just the basic, you could do like a political theory book, right? I'm sure there are great ones that will just break down Locke, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, all of them. You could break down, there's a book on the existentialist philosophers, Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Sartre.
Dostoevsky is he's one of the only, would you consider him a philosopher? Really?
I think so, yeah.
Because I can get through a Dostoevsky book because it's so fucking engaging. Because it's fiction, I guess. Like, it's just so engaging. And I guess if you consider it philosophy, then I'm like, okay, well, I'll start there.
I would say
keep
so.
reading that.
And that's actually a great point.
Yeah.
I think if someone's natural inclination is to kind of be drawn to storytelling and fictional works and narratives, which is a lot of people. I mean, we all love story, right? I would start with some of the existentialists. I think that's a great place to start. Dostoevsky and Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling. Both of those are very...
I'm going to put stuff in the description.
Kierkegaard is a little more religious than Dostoevsky, but they
Dostoevsky's pretty goddamn religious. There's a lot of subtext there.
Actually, yes. I think it's... right, exactly. I think they both have that tendency.
Yeah.
I think Kierkegaard's is more
fiction,
explicitly
there's
religious.
a lot of religious subtext, I think, at least personally.
But these are, I'm just kind of throwing off the top of my head, but another one, obviously is like Plato's Republic is really good. I love Hegel, Hume, but again, a lot of them wrote treatises or they wrote essays, a series of essays that they would combine into. So when you talk about works, you're really talking about treatises most often.
Well, that's good to know because I was just like mentioning this when we had our little technical difficulty, but an issue that I have, like I have Beyond Good and Evil, haven't read the whole thing because I start reading it. And, it's one of those books where if you really want to try to like ingrain it into your mind, you have to read, you have to pass over it a couple times. And I'll lose I'll get unengaged by it and kind of like put it to the side, won't finish it.
And he's very long-winded.
I like that. I really like the idea that you're just saying, pick it up and go to what interests you because it's like not like because to me, it discourages me because I think, God damn it, I can't I can't finish this. But it's about what do you get out of it?
That's right.
It's not like you have to accomplish this feat.
That's
what do you get out of it? Right?
Exactly right. It's no one's going to check a box that says, okay, Cole read one more book, but we have
those
that in our
pretentious
head.
Philosophers.
That's right. Those are kind of the assholes we don't like anyway.
Yeah.
But so I would say that's a great place to start. Pick up a book, go to most of these books are free or really cheap. You can get them at thrift stores, But what I was saying is you can find books that summarize certain philosophies. I'll just list a few. And if someone's listening and maybe you haven't really gone into this much, I'll just list a few philosophies that you might just look up the philosophy, get the bullet points, and see which of these philosophies best relate to you. Yeah. And then start there. Dive into that.
List it for me and
start. Yeah, and start going to some of those authors and seeing if they have something to offer you. But we can kind of move backwards. You can start with something like postmodernism and post-structuralism, which would be like Michel Foucault, Derrida, and other 20th century writers. You can move backwards to the pragmatist school like William James, John Dewey, and a few others.
By the way, sorry to interrupt you, Jordan Peterson fans, it's good to challenge because, right? I mean, I don't know. Have you been in the loop with Jordan Peterson? I feel I really kind of like.
Do you know how he?
Oh, I know about that. Today, I just listened to like some Joe Rogan clips talking about all the shit going down with him, prayers going out to him. But you were mentioning like Foucault and Derrida, and I know people be like, "That's postmodernism. Don't read that shit." That's but it's good to challenge yourself if you never read it. Yeah. And you just listen to what someone says about it and you have a preconceived idea. But that's another whole podcast we should go into. No, you're right. But I'd love to have your thoughts on all that stuff.
If you don't mind, I want to say one thing on that and then we can go on. But I've talked with Ryan about this a lot actually too. I think I like Jordan Peterson. I think one of his main flaws is that he tends to reduce an entire philosophy to one version of that philosophy. Yeah. And I would just say this mostly happens with postmodernism. I've almost never heard him say anything good about postmodernism. Yet he actually functions from a pretty postmodern place.
It is the paradox about him.
I mean, and for those who don't know, but postmodernism might just be defined as a relatively relativistic moral view, you might say.
Yeah.
So
is that what it is? It's like a relativistic moral view, or just
that's part of postmodernism, but it's really just post-structural in the sense that it's challenging modernism, and modernism is basically referred to in the sense that it's how do I say this? Modernism could basically be like the Enlightenment philosophers, right? And rationalism, yes.
So it's challenging that.
It's challenging pure rationalism. It's saying, is pure rationalism all that we need? Whatever happened to subjective experience? Whatever happened to individual insights?
Isn't that so interesting? Like, isn't that crazy to me? Like, something that I'm more and more, because I don't know, I would have maybe considered myself leaning toward becoming really conservative. I started listening to Jordan Peterson, a lot of Jocko, and neither of them even are conservatives, but if you listen to them, like if you put that in a black box and listen to it, it kind of can lean you towards
there are certain ideas that feel a little more conservative.
Now, I mean, it's crazy that like, it really is crazy. We've had this talk before. I mean, we've kind of talked about this, but everything is subjective. It's crazy. It's really crazy to I guess try to degrade the idea of subjectivism.
It's true. I think you're exactly right.
You know what I mean? It's one of those really interesting things.
Well, and Jordan is usually talking about it from a political perspective, which
that's
I get.
True.
The political postmodernism usually leads to things like he talks about, the pathology of sociology, socialism, fascism, all of that. At some level, postmodernism kind of opened the door to those things because it said, "Oh, there is no absolute better or worse." So that people abuse that idea.
That's like where it gets slippery, right?
That's where it gets really slippery. But even though that's true, there are benefits to it. And actually, he's postmodern in a lot of ways, in the sense that he'll always say phrases like, I think you have to find your truth. You have to discover your individual purpose, right? That is a very subjective claim. He's not saying everyone has the same purpose or everyone should do the same exact thing or follow the exact... He's saying that this might look different for everyone, right? All of that is sort of has a subjective undertone to it.
It's really interesting. It's almost like something that I think about sometimes is like, on an individual level, everything is subjective. If I'm just kind of only considering my narrow perspective, everything is subjective, really. But when you escalate it to hundreds of people, thousands of people, that's where it seems like structure and common truths become necessary, right?
Right.
But on a subjective level, it's like,
well, and you can even divide it more.
An individual level.
An individual, right. So you could say that there's the individual subjective, and then you could say that there's the inner subjective or the collective subjective. And that is to say, like, what a society believes. So, for example, if or even groups within that society. For example, I could say, I'm a Christian, I like God, whatever, I like Jesus, I like worship, I do all this stuff, and that's my subjective perception of truth. That's my subjective experience. But when I go to church with other people who do all those same things and believe all those same things, that's now an intersubjective experience. So it's still subjective relative to the group and relative to like other groups. But anyway, so my whole point is that is just that I wish Jordan Peterson would mention. And I get he's doing a lot of things. No one's perfect, he can't mention everything, but I wish he would mention that there are some benefits to postmodernism. And actually, I would argue, and I'm not the only one who's said this, but I really believe that the postmodern and post-structural movement are in part what led to the civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement was all about the idea that there is no better or worse. Yes, you're not better than me. I'm not better than you, innately anyway. And that based on skin or skin color, gender, fill in the blank, beliefs, like religious affiliation, doesn't make anyone better or worse than anyone else, right? And that actually is a really subjective claim. That's a very postmodern claim, the idea that we all have equal value, even though we're all different. So there are benefits to postmodernism that shouldn't be forgotten. There's our little side caveat.
For sure. And it's like that long-ass side caveat.
Yeah, sorry, that was long.
It's just interesting. I don't know. Jordan Peterson is a lovely guy, but you have to market. You have to sell somehow.
That's right. I will still listen to him. I'm going through Maps and Meaning again right now because I remember the first time I was a little, like you were saying with Beyond Good and Evil. It's long, dude. It's like 30 hours.
I haven't read Maps and Meaning. I've listened to some of his lectures. I've listened to the.
And actually, I should be honest. I haven't been through the whole book. I did that sort of chapter thing. I went to the chapters that kind of caught my attention. So now I'm trying to get through the whole thing because it really is good. But Anyway, so let's go back. We'll kind of track through some of the philosophies. So you got postmodernism you could study, and Foucault and all them. You have the pragmatists like William James. And you can go back further. Existentialism. I would say this is one, especially in the modern world, that people really would connect with. Existentialism is basically the idea, long story short, that you need to find your own authentic version of truth, your own reality. You need to pursue it. Don't let your ideas be entirely influenced by the people around you, right? Don't just ascribe to a tribal attachment to a group identity or group thought, right? And the existentialists were all about trying to kind of challenge the norms, but also trying to figure out who they were and be a genuine version of themselves. That all is existentialism. And it's a lot about authenticity and freedom of thought, you know? So there's a school of thought. And you could list more and more and more. Stoicism, Epicureanism.
Stoicism is definitely something I want to just dig into more. But existentialism, I feel like, is so, like, I feel like our American, maybe the world, but American culture is like, we are like, you know, we've talked about this before, validation, that like, it's just all about people seeking validation, which is like, isn't that isn't that like the negative thing discussed in existentialism? Like what you just said, you don't have your own, like you're not, you need external or outside validation. It's something I struggle with deeply for a long time. But that's like our whole fucking society right now. That's what Instagram is. That's what everything is. It's crazy, but that's what it's built on.
Yes, and the commercial world is sort of built on it.
Everything, movies, everything is about marketing and ads, and like all ads is trying to make people feel like they fit in somehow.
Yes.
It's crazy. We really like try to zoom away from it and look down. I wonder just like 1,000 years from now, if people, what you know, who the fuck knows, but
I don't
what
know.
we'll look back on and say, Jesus Christ, think about like this thing right here.
Yeah.
That's like our society right now is this.
It's nuts.
That's
it. Really
that's our society.
I think you're right, and I think the world.
And that's existentialism, right?
Yeah, I think the
people
world
are suffering
could use
so much inside.
existentialism right now. You know, this sort of return to the self, return to the individual. You know, return to individual freedom of thought, freedom of expression, return to intellectual honesty with oneself, return to
that's a hard
basic
thing.
tenets of
it's so
philosophy.
hard. Like this is what I struggle with. This is my struggle right now. I'm 26, about to turn 27, living kind of alone in Los Angeles. My struggle is I don't know what the fuck sometimes like matters. Sometimes I just like don't know what the fuck I should be doing with my life.
Right.
And everyone has something different to say. Yeah. You know, and I have
a lot of different ideas.
I don't have anyone, you know, I do, but I just don't have that like foundational divine masculinity structure. Jordan Peterson was that for me. And that, you know, it only goes so far. And my struggle is like, I get home sometimes, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm miserable doing what I'm doing, but it's my responsibility to do this right now. Is that worth it? Like, am I ruining certain aspects of my life? Like, you know what I mean? And I think so many fucking people struggle with this, especially young men in our society right now.
Well, I would say that you have a leg up in the sense that you just asked that question.
Yeah.
Because let's circle all the way back to what is the point of philosophy. The point of philosophy is to ask a question like that.
Yeah. It's crazy because you ask it over and over and over. And sometimes you have insights. Sometimes you have days where you're like, oh, you know what?
Do you know, this is in part why I think all these works are so long. Because these philosophers were just wrestling with themselves.
Yeah.
It was good ones. And you see it, and you see Nietzsche. He'll say something and then make fun of himself for saying it, and then make fun of the people who make fun of that, and then he returns back to it. You can tell he's kind of crazy, you know. And this, I would say, this is the pathology of too much philosophy without mental health balancing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's
because too much knowledge
crazy.
can be a little dangerous too.
Man, you can go crazy.
Yes, you can.
I don't know if this is something we can cut this. Have you done mushrooms? I know you don't want to talk about this. Don't talk about it. But
but I've never done that.
Just like, God, man,
it's something I'm not actually opposed to.
I just had that experience doing shrooms, and it's just a mind, like, it's just one of those experiences that I already. Here's a weird thing. I did shrooms for the first time. And you've heard of microdosing, right?
Yeah,
Paul Stamets, and
you don't
it's going to be legal probably in the next couple of years, microdosing. But I did shrooms, and like not a huge dose, not the hero's journey dose, but I did enough, and it was like I never felt more at home in my life.
Really?
It's almost like all this shit we're talking about.
That's so interesting.
It's insane. Like if you're into, like I'm telling you, you would be someone that would be interested in that shit. But it really
I will definitely, before I die, try these sorts of things. I mean, they're just another form of changing consciousness.
It's mind blowing.
That
all the shit we're talking about right now is like, it almost like, and this was not that long ago, and it partly almost like doing that and having that experience led to a lot of the questioning everything that's going on in my life and everything.
That's really common, I hear.
It's crazy. I mean, it's just like, it almost takes you outside of your reality and like allows you to look down on like all this shit we're talking about. It almost like gives you the insight. The way it feels is like it zooms out, but it also it gives you the insight that this is all just a game. Like it's all just a game,
dude. Yeah.
It's crazy, but and you feel this like deep security, like holy fucking shit. Like this conversation, words, language, it's just like made up.
Yeah.
It's like
we're just making sounds with our face.
It's crazy. And when you go through that, you feel that comfort. And in that moment, when you have that experience, you have this, I had this like a couple of weeks of profound courage. Like I had this courage to do shit I never did and say stuff that I never said. But then when it starts to fade, you're in this state of just constantly questioning everything. And you feel like you can go fucking crazy. And then you have to get grounded again. But anyway, that's a whole different tangent.
No, I think you're right though. And I can see that. I can see that as a possible, and this is one of the reasons I think, this was my suspicion. It's one of the reasons I think some of these things are illegal. Is because
some people, there are people that would go literally
the wrong
crazy.
People get their hands on those sorts of things, and it can be really dangerous, and they use it the wrong way. It becomes like a recreational activity. I mean, it can mess with someone's perception of reality so much that they live in delusion until the day they die.
Oh yeah,
I mean, and
it's dangerous. I can see that.
Yeah, it's scary. I'm not sure I agree that it should be illegal, but anyway,
it'd be regulated. I think it would be. I mean, there's serious benefits to low doses.
Right.
It's if you're doing like high doses all the time and you're constantly throwing your consciousness into some other realm. Like you will go crazy.
Yeah.
You really can.
I mean, and I would even say this, and I'm not afraid to say this on here, but I think I've told you this, but almost every night I have been taking weed gummies to help me sleep because I've had sleep issues for, let's see, I'm 20. I've had sleep issues for about 13 years in my life.
Well, that's so beneficial. There's a lot of benefits.
I have tried so many sleep aids, and I'm not endorsing anything for one person or another. I'm not saying everything works for everyone, but I've tried so many sleep aids, and so many different forms of meditation and whatever that would help you sleep. You know? And it's nothing has worked like that. But I honestly, like if there's the bear, I have like the leg of the bear.
Well, that's just the perfect amount for that.
A very small amount. My goal isn't to get totally fried, but I think my goal is just to bring, like you're saying, you kind of bring your mind out of the game just a little bit, just so that you can allow your body to do what it needs to do. I mean, when my body is tired, it needs to sleep. So the mind needs to shut up.
I smoke. Like I definitely, when on my really, really long, stressful days, I will smoke at the end of the day, and it just allows me that like comfort of, it like takes you out of your reality for a little bit. And for some people, that is not good. For some people, it turns them into couch potatoes, and they can't do anything.
Or they become paranoid of something.
Yeah, they become so many people get paranoid. I wonder what that. Well, I guess I could see that. You get. It's like, one way that I described shrooms is like, it's like getting really, really, really high on marijuana, lacking the fogginess of marijuana. It's like you're as clear and present as we are now. Without the fog, but with that same mind-bending, thought-bending. It's wild. You got to try it someday.
Have you read Aldous Huxley?
No.
At all?
No.
Well, so he wrote Brave New World, probably his most
I've heard that
famous work, But he also did, he wrote, this is on my list of things to read, it's called Doors of Perception. And he talks about this. He talks about drug trips, and he talks about like mystical experiences, much like William James has a book.
You know what I want to put in this
description? Of religious experience.
In this description, before I forget, I want to put your recommendations of some of the philosophies or essays.
Yeah, we can.
And
list
then if you have a reading list, I want that. I want to know that, but I'll put it in the description too before I forget.
That'd be good. Yeah. But so anyway, I haven't read it, but he's a very good writer, and he's a very clear thinker.
And he did drugs and then wrote about his experiences?
Yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff, and he writes about the experience, and he basically believes, and this is just a theory, I have no evidence of this, but he basically believes that drugs help you to see a reality that exists at all times, but we don't have the perception available to us to see these things. you
Yeah,
know?
I think that's what drugs are.
And so at some level,
After
that
doing
probably
shrooms-
might be that's probably true.
Yeah, after doing mushrooms,
know.
I really do feel like what mushrooms do is take away all. I didn't even do like the 5 grams,
That
you know.
much, right?
But if I could see that if you do the 5 grams and go to the complete, like,
Extreme
you know,
of it.
it just, all it does is take away every single barrier that we have as physical humans.
That's interesting.
And you're just existing as like infinitely expanding consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can't, like, even if you don't believe in spirituality, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in divine or mystical, drugs can still do that practically, because there is this part of our brain that's creating our reality at all times. So drugs can just take away those barriers and allow you to just soak in the data.
Yes.
And that's what it felt like.
It's fascinating.
That's what it felt like. But I didn't even do the amount. I did like 2 grams, and it felt like I was still able to walk around and function and think. But it gave you that, like, whoa, holy,
So
like everything.
interesting.
It's crazy. I could talk about it forever. I want to have a podcast to talk about it.
Food of the Gods
No.
from Terence McKenna. You would.
Oh, I
find
love
it,
Terence
This is the
McKenna.
whole like Stone
Yeah.
Ape theory. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would find it really fascinating.
Stone Ape theory. I mean, if there's anyone that likes Terence McKenna a lot and is familiar with his stuff and likes Paul Stamets, I have this whole, like, someone needs to combine like Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Terence McKenna, and Paul Stamets. Someone needs to, like, deeply delve into their studies and research and somehow put it all together.
One big collection.
Because they all
That'd be
say
good.
shit where I'm like, wait a minute. Paul Stamets talks about mushrooms being the divine organism of life, which makes sense because you eat mushrooms and you get thrown into a whole completely different fucking reality.
Right. It
And
already
then Terence
exists.
McKenna talks about how humans became the way we are because we ate these mushrooms and it allowed our minds to expand, and then we developed. And Sam Harris talks about all the shit he talks about Jordan Peterson. Someone needs to, like,
That would be good.
think about that shit and put it all together.
Yeah.
That'd be so interesting.
Well, I think is a good segue. This is actually I think a perfect way to kind of shift back into the I think like the punchline of what we were saying about
God, we're tangent.
philosophy.
We're going
No, it's
on
okay. We're
these
like
crazy
Tangent City
tangents.
here. It's okay. It's both of us. But I was thinking, because you're talking about expanding consciousness, right? And it just popped into my head that is actually what philosophy is.
Right, yeah.
It is the process by which we learn to expand our consciousness so that we don't get stuck in the same patterns that we've been stuck in our whole lives.
Hold on, say that one more time.
Yeah, I forgot what I said, but it's basically the process by which you expand your horizons, you broaden your perspectives, you expand your consciousness so that you learn about things, even about yourself, that help to avoid you getting stuck in thought patterns that you've been stuck in your whole life.
That's like really not even just with philosophy in this podcast, but that is such
anything.
a key insight, right? Is not getting stuck. And so many fucking people feel stuck.
It's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the worst. And as far as I understand it, people who have struggled with severe depression, I mean, we've both actually probably been through something
We've talked about
like
this
that.
stuff.
I think a lot of people have experienced that at some point in their life. Some people experience it more often than others. It's more chronic than others.
Yeah.
But most people I've read about this, and that's one of the most common phrases is I just feel stuck.
Yeah.
I feel trapped. I feel like I'm in the dark. Like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of that, some of it's I'm not saying it's all caused by just the mind. Some of it is hormonal and chemical and environmental. I mean, it's not just the person's fault.
No.
But I think it does help when you have more perspectives from which to draw in any given moment, right?
Of course.
Because say that you're in a moment, say that you're in a situation, you got in a fight with someone and it's a bad day and everything went wrong, right? You got in a car accident. I mean, you could just list 50 things that went wrong, right? At the end of the day, you could view that as like the end of life. I mean, just the worst possible thing is happening to you, right? It's just a terrible day. And you could let that go so far that you start to make conclusions about who you are and life and other people, and you become really dark and really pessimistic and negative. And that can actually change one day like that, or several days like that, or one season like that, can change the rest of your life in a traumatic and dark way, right? But now imagine for a moment that you're sitting there on the couch at the end of the day and you're eating your dinner and you're listening to a philosophy podcast. And on that podcast, they say, you know what? There's this really great quote from fill in the blank. And it says, when you're going through a dark time, blah, 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 blah. And it's some quote that just hits you, right? And And maybe it's a story. Maybe it's through a story. Because stories are all about tragedy and then overcoming tragedy, right? Maybe it's some story that hits you. Maybe it's some movie. It doesn't have to be just philosophy. I don't want to say this is only possible through philosophy.
I feel like movies and stories are philosophy.
I agree. I think they are all part of the umbrella of wisdom, you know, because there's some sort of really useful insight that's being conveyed through.
If you're a good storyteller, you're a good script writer, you're a good filmmaker,
Yes.
you're
a good
delving
speaker.
into your psyche and you're trying to like
You're exactly
learn
right.
something, you know?
So I think so imagine so you're at the end of the day and you hear this podcast and all it can take is one line and it can snap you out of all that. And you go, oh, you know what? This was a hard day, but good. Yeah. Right? Like Jocko, right? Yeah. Oh, that was hard for you and you struggled? Good. Yeah. You know, this sucks right now and you think this is the end of the road for you and this is darkness and there will never be light. Good. Yeah. Because you know what? That's going to make you resilient and stronger, but only if you let it.
Yeah. Only if you have that perspective.
Only if you let it, right? You know, and only if you view it as basically a mental workout. Only if you view it as the equivalent of going to the gym and it's the burn, right? You're in the middle of the burn, dude. Yeah. You're like on the last rep, you know, don't give up now, you know, keep pushing because when you leave the gym, it's going to feel better. Yeah. And in 6 months, when you keep doing this, you're going to look better. You're going to feel better. You're going to know that it's better. You're going to know that it was worth it, right? Yeah. And so sometimes all it takes is one line like that. And it's one of the reasons I love philosophy. It's one of the reasons I love psychology and sociology is because they give you insights that you otherwise may have never heard. You know? And again, they're insights from professional thinkers. That's the best way I can think to say it.
People that can articulate it
right?
better than
people
you can.
That's right. They can like Dostoevsky. I mean, they are such good writers.
Dude, Notes from Underground. Jesus, Notes from Underground. When I read that, I was like, this is really like good. I felt like that guy for a long time.
And the way he paints the picture. Yeah. I mean, the way he paints where he is and how he's feeling and how the other people are feeling and this, I mean, all of that, right, can affect you on such a deep, powerful, subconscious level. It might even bypass your conscious mind, but it will still do good.
Yeah, it's crazy. Know? Even just when you listen to a podcast and you have that really kind of real deep insight that I'm not the only person going through this. Yeah, you feel better when you realize, well, wait a minute, this isn't like just
this
me.
Isn't unique to me.
Like there are people all over the place. Everyone goes through this kind of shit at some point.
And I've always thought this, and I think I heard this from a philosophy thing or a book or a pastor or someone. Basically, the idea that there's always someone who has it worse than you, and will get out on the other side of life. You know, and there's always someone who's been through what you've been through or worse and has made it out all the better. Yeah. You know, and just that thought that I think, man, just the fact that that's possible, just the fact that that person exists, that potential is there. I got to go that way. Yeah. That's the direction I got to walk.
Yeah, it's such a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And so I would say, you know, so I was thinking about this week, if I can kind of sum up the philosophy thing in like maybe 3 points, I would say this. Point number 1, philosophy is largely about not just loving wisdom and all of that, but it's also the pursuit of it. Number 1, I would say exposure to ideas that otherwise you may never be exposed to, right? And broadening your perspective, broadening your horizons, right? Reading and learning from professional thinkers who've done this way longer than you have, for way longer, right? For thousands of years, we have thinkers who've been building on prior thinkers. This is what's so cool about it, right? Yeah. When you study Nietzsche, when you study Dostoevsky, you know, any of them, when you even study the Enlightenment philosophers, you study Locke, Voltaire, Kant, you know, when you're studying them, you're not just studying them. You're studying everyone they study, right? And their synthesis of that information in a new way. When you read even modern philosophers, right? Jordan Peterson, Sam Harrison, those people, you're not just reading them. You're reading everything they've read, you know, at some point, at some level, right? That information is being synthesized in meaningful ways. It's so cool because this has never been easier than today. Yeah. It's never been easier to pick up your phone.
It's one of the benefits, right?
It's free. Yeah. I mean, it's actually free. Yeah. You download the podcast app, you go and you type in the word philosophy and go, dude. Yeah. And it's free. Yeah. You know, it doesn't have to be philosophy. Type in psychology. It'll be some awesome podcast
anything that you're interested in.
Sociology, right? Whatever, right? Yeah. Any of the social sciences, any of the humanities, right? And just go. See what's there. Because I would guarantee to anyone, you will not regret it. Yeah. You will not regret going down that road because your mind will be expanded. Your consciousness will open up to worlds and realms that you never thought possible. You know, you will begin to think things and understand things and see the world in a way that changes your perspective and crafts your worldview intentionally, so that it's conducive to the kind of life you want to live. You know, this is why I'm such an advocate of philosophy. So number one is exposure, right? So that's it. Number one, just expose yourself to the information. Number two is hopefully, and this is sort of sequential, hopefully one leads to two leads to three, but number two is use that information and allow that information to challenge your assumptions, like we were saying earlier, right? Challenge your assumptions, challenge your worldview. Because again, I guarantee you, every single person listening, myself included, yourself, Hunter would agree, we all have beliefs that are wrong. We all have beliefs that are at least incomplete, right?
That's the big step, right? Going from just kind of listening to having the awareness enough to know that you got to challenge yourself somehow.
Know thyself.
You know,
You're right. You have to challenge yourself. It's just like anything else, right? If you want to get physically stronger, you have to go through an uncomfortable process. You have to go through an uncomfortable process of getting off your butt, going to the gym, right? Lifting things that are heavy off the ground. I mean, if you think about the concept, right? It's not very comfortable to work out, right? The experience of your muscles burning, I think it was Sam Harris who I first heard say this. The experience of your muscles burning, that pain, that discomfort, out of the context of working out, if you just woke up in the middle of the night and your muscles were burning,
it's
you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. You know? But the reason we do it and the reason we view it as a positive thing is because we understand that the outcome is worth the input, right? We understand that our efforts will not go in vain, right? And it's good for us. It's good for us to do that. I would say the same thing is true for your mind. You got to work out your mind.
That's such a good way to like paint all the people that listen to Jocko and they're so into like put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You have to do the fucking same thing with your thoughts.
With your thoughts.
Right?
You're exactly right.
Like you have to accept the shit that you know deep down is fucked up about yourself.
You got to know yourself.
Or you got to accept the realities that you know things that you should be doing. It's like the stuff Jordan Peterson talks about, but it's such a different level when you practice it and act it out. You know?
I would say this, you don't know what you don't know. Right? You don't know what it is that you don't know because you don't know it. So there's no way for you to be aware that it's something you don't know. And I would say the same is true. You probably also don't know, myself included, I'm not saying everyone else, me too, but we don't know which beliefs we have are wrong. That's the problem.
Is
that they live in there and they're motivating our everyday, right? And they're crafting the way that we view the world and view people and interact with other humans, right? And they're just it's like a parasite. And it lives in there and it's just eating away at your life, right? And this negative view, this wrong view, this incorrect view, this view that is vastly reductive and incomplete and harmful, that view will poison your life until you figure out what the hell it is and get it out of you. You know, you got to get it out, you know?
I mean, no, it's just
until you know,
I needed to hear all this shit from someone sitting across from me. That's like, you're like saying it to me today. No, it's so true. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
You're right.
It's crazy the level, like how trapped you can get in your mind. It's just crazy.
It's nuts. And what's crazy, and this I've noticed this about myself too, and I'm sure that you have. It's a snowball.
Oh yeah.
So one wrong belief, unchecked, often leads to other wrong beliefs. This is not just like, oh, you got one thing you have to fix. You'll eventually find it. This is one thing that every year you live with that thing unchecked, it has the potential to spread to more beliefs. This is how I believe, in part, people become so far gone, you know, so negative, so pessimistic, so deep into anxiety and depression, you know. It didn't start there. It almost never starts there. It started somewhere much more benign. It started somewhere much more shallow and superficial, somewhere much more simple, right? But because they had one or two beliefs from a young age that was wrong or incorrect or was hurting them.
Or even just negative.
Or negative.
You can just think of it as
it's
negative.
Not even that it's factually incorrect, just that it's negative. It's an unhelpful way to view a situation, right? Or it's an unhelpful predisposition you might have, right? That one thing that goes unchecked just turns into this snowball, this chain of effects. And by the time that person is 40, 50 years old, it's almost impossible to correct that stuff.
That's a sad thing.
It's so hard, you know? And I do believe, this is why I'm such an advocate also of like therapy, you know, I do believe that a good therapist can break all that down and help you to kind of work through.
I never understand the people that don't think that think therapy is bullshit or think it's wrong.
So stupid?
I think for me, therapy, I'm probably should fucking go to therapist. But for me, the times that I've gone, and Hunter, every time I talk to him, it's a therapy session. This is a fucking therapy session, right? This is what therapy is, really. It's like talking to someone that can maybe help you step outside of yourself.
Yes.
And kind of see things a little bit more better, either objectively or even just subjectively better for yourself. There's nothing like, there's nothing crazy about therapy where people think therapists, like what, some pretentious guy who's gonna knows all the answers.
And it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean, you might be, but it doesn't mean that
everyone's broken in some way.
You're right, actually. But it doesn't mean that you are different from anybody else. It doesn't mean that you're worse than other people. It doesn't mean that you're stupider than other people. It doesn't mean that, actually, I think it means in some ways you're wiser than other people.
Yeah, I mean, 100% you can think of it that way.
Jordan Peterson just checked himself into rehab because he realized, and this is why I think he's so wise, he realized that, okay, I was on this drug to help with my anxiety because my wife has cancer and life is hard, but I want to get off it now. And I'm finding myself not being able to do that. I'm getting withdrawals. And so I need to know myself. I need to know this is going to be a hard battle and I need help. Even someone who's got a PhD, dude, who's like got millions of dollars, who's got it all laid out, has so much brilliant wisdom and insight in his head, still knows that he needs rehab for that moment in his life.
He's very, very wise. Very
it's a perfect
wise
example of that.
Yeah.
So being honest, and so that's what I would say. So point number 1 is exposure to new ideas. Point number 2 is allowing those new ideas to challenge you, right? And to sort of pull up dead roots, and plant new fresh plants, fresh seeds, so that you can live the life you want to live, right? Get out those false assumptions. Get rid of those expectations that are hurting you.
You need to come up with some, you should write a little fucking free ebook,
like an essay or
like
something.
A pamphlet. Before you move on to the third thing, but what are ways that you could maybe even just thinking of it on the spot right now? Think of me as the subject, but what are like practices that you could say, try this tomorrow? Like in terms of challenging yourself intellectually, what's like a practice or what's an action that you can take to make yourself challenge yourself? It's one thing to be sitting on my couch, whatever, thinking, I'm going to read Beyond Good and Evil, but what's something that you could that you could write down and make it a reality, challenge yourself in this way. That's good. It's even just think about it. It's something very interesting.
No, I think that's good. I mean, the first thing that actually comes to mind is your next conflict, whatever it is, whether it's a conflict with yourself, whether it's you're upset. I mean, I consider that like an inner conflict, right? Whether you got in an argument or a confrontation, whether you just aren't feeling good, right? Whatever it is, whatever your next conflict is, try and really figure out what led up to it. What were all the events that led up to that, right? And then this might be the real kicker. Try and figure out what beliefs you started establishing during, before, or after, right, that are hurting you. And figure out why you believe those things and analyze them. Are they true? Are they real? Because a lot of times, for example, say I get in a fight, I'm not married, but say I was, and I get in a fight with my spouse, right? If I get in a fight with my spouse and we just had this conflict and I'm angry and she's angry and it's very negative, I should think about that and I should try and analyze what caused it. What beliefs am I having about this person that might be causing this conflict, right? So what false beliefs might I be having about this person, right? How many communication errors are caused by misinterpretation and assumption? Maybe all of them,
No,
so
just
many,
when you're saying this right now, I'm just sitting here thinking taking it a step further, maybe I'm thinking that's an amazing practice. Next conflict you have, and let's just make it easy. The next conflict you have with another person, whether it be spouse, coworker, boss, whatever it is.
Small conflict.
Think of, like you said, what happened that kind of initiated it. Yeah. And then think of what beliefs do you have. And then going even a step further, think of how that was your fault. Right. How is it your fucking fault?
Or how could it be?
How could it be your fault?
Just that question.
Take responsibility. It's like going into Jocko's thing. Take responsibility of that shit. And think, well, wait a minute. Because you're blaming other people all the time. Yeah. How can I take responsibility for this,
So if I get in a fight with my spouse, for example, right? And I realize in myself that I'm having beliefs like the following. I might like one of the following. She said that to piss me off. She said that because she just doesn't like me anymore. Yeah. She said that because she's just comparing me to someone else. She said that because, You have all these reasons as to why you think that person said that. I would sit down with yourself, not even with them at first, just with yourself and say, do you know that for sure?
Yeah.
Do you? And this is a branch of philosophy called epistemology. Do you know that for sure? How do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that you know that? And where did you get that information from? Because if it's wrong, it's hurting you.
Yeah.
You know, and just that you could start there with the conflict, because that's very practical, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us have conflicts every day,
And you can't answer, yes, you know that for certain in most cases.
Exactly.
You know, you really
exactly. And you really can't even find the answer without talking to that person.
Yeah.
You know, but which is why you have to start here.
Yeah.
Because you are not open to talking to them until you have convinced yourself that you are missing information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But until you realize that you're missing part of the data, that you're missing part of the picture, you will not open your mind and your heart to that person to accept new information because you're stuck in that stubborn place.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know this all sounds very self-helpy, but by the way, I would say self-help is part of philosophy.
It's, I mean, it is.
Why not? You know?
Like, I fucking...
Dig into it.
The people that get all negative about self-help, like, I understand that, but...
It's the same people that don't like therapy.
Yeah, I mean, what's more important than trying to be a better person? And even if you don't think about being a better person, like, relative to other people, just feeling better, generally.
Right.
You know,
it's
so important.
I think it's the people who have the problem with it that need it the most.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
But I would I would say, okay, so then number 3 is this, if we can kind of go to the third point of why philosophy is good. So the first is exposure, just so you have more information, a broader perspective to help to open up your eyes to maybe what you didn't know was there before. Number 2 is allow those things to challenge your life and challenge your worldview and challenge your perspective, right? So that when you get in fights, you know, you don't just assume it's the other person's fault, assume they meant what they meant, right? Challenge your assumptions, challenge your expectations, right? And the wisdom of other people can help you do that.
Yeah.
Because they've been through that, right? This is not the first time there's ever been a conflict between spouses, right? This is not some new thing in the universe that no one's ever figured out.
Yeah.
Lots of really smart people have studied this for a really long time.
Yeah.
You know, and if you find that research and if you find that data, it can only help you.
That's one of the...
It can only help you.
Just, I know, put a pin because I want you to move on to the third thing. We have a little bit of time, but that's one of those things, just specifically speaking about marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, your spouse. The next time you get in a fight with your spouse and you feel like you've been wronged, right? Like what you just said, think about, like, challenge yourself, but also think there's some other person that's been in this exact situation that has went back into the room with their spouse and forgave them and cured the whole fucking thing. And just like that.
They know the solution.
It's crazy, right?
It's crazy.
One of those crazy things to think about.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's crazy to think that could be you.
Yeah.
By a simple shift of thought.
Yeah.
By a simple shift of perspective.
And apply that to, like, whatever fucking situation you're going
anything.
in. You
It
know?
doesn't have to be the spouse. It can be, I mean, I'm a teacher, so it can be like one of my students, you know. Just got in an altercation this week. Actually, it wasn't me that got in the altercation. It was 2 students that got in an altercation, and then it kind of led to this little conflict with me and a student because they were like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And of course, that means they did something.
God, how do you deal with that shit all the time?
Well, it's very frustrating, but I have to sit down and I have to assume, okay, I have to try and take a step back, number 1, right? Yeah. And expose, because I have all these ideas in my head of stuff I've read about sociology and psychology and how to teach and the psychology of teaching and all that. So I'm trying to tap back into that. And the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, this person's a human. They probably have a hard family life, right? I can tell by the way they're acting that they're very closed off. They're very stubborn. So it's probably not that they hate me or that they hate the class or that they're just a shitty person, right? I hate those assumptions. Those are almost always wrong, right?
Like, it's almost always wrong.
But that's what a lot of people just jump to. They say, oh, so many teachers in my school. Well, actually, I've got a pretty good school. I actually like a lot of teachers, but I've heard a couple teachers at my school and many teachers at other schools will say things like, you know, oh, well, they're just shitty students. Yeah. I was like, well, maybe you're just not a very good teacher.
That's how every single organization is, right? That's like all workworkplaces. Just
deflect.
We were talking about this before, leadership, the lack of leadership in every single fucking organization that exists.
And it's hard. Leadership is really hard. So I would say, you know, that was an example of me. I really tried to be intentional with that, and it helped a lot. And we talked for about 10 minutes during a break, and eventually she started to open up and said, well, I'm from this place, and my dad and my family, and you go, okay, it all makes sense now if I just let myself sit down and listen, don't jump to conclusions, right? But you have to train yourself to be able to do something like that. I mean, it really is kind of a skill.
Yeah, you have
to just not be reactive in the moment, right? Yeah. To be intentional in every moment. You know, it's one of the benefits of studying psychology, understanding and listening to podcasts about the mind and cognitive science, right? The more you do that, the more in tune you should be with yourself, because you recognize more often than not, you might be wrong,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that insight right there might be all you need to just change your life. So,
Yeah, for sure. What's the third point?
so the third point is, once you've exposed yourself to it, and once you allow that to sort of contradict and shape and change your views and challenge your views. The third point, and this actually comes from Ayn Rand. She has an essay. Here's a great place to start, by the way. Wonderful place to start. Anyone who's interested, this just popped in my head. Ayn Rand has an essay, I think it's called Philosophy, Who Needs It? Or Philosophy, What's the Point of It? Or something like that. But
Gotcha.
you can find it.
Yeah.
So, and there's a great quote, a very long quote, so I don't know the whole thing, but just sort of paraphrasing. The punchline of the quote basically is, you have two options as to how your worldview will develop. Option number one, intentionally. Option number two, randomly. That's basically it. You have two options, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a worldview. Everyone does. Everyone has a philosophy. Everyone, you know, and it might not be super explicit. It might not be really clear what that, you might not even know what that is, right? But if I were to sit down with you, or someone, or I think someone like Hunter would be even better.
That's such a deep thing. Such a simple way to put such a deep concept,
I think you have to start there, right? At the most like simple level. So everyone has a philosophy, and it's what motivates you every day. It's what drives your decisions. It's what gets you out of bed is your philosophy, right?
It's your why.
Right. And so some people right now might be thinking, I don't have a philosophy, right? Well, you might not call it existentialism or Buddhism or whatever, but you have one, and I'll prove it to you. Every morning, you wake up for a reason. Why? Why do you wake up for a reason? Well, someone might answer something like, well, because I wake up because I'm going to go to work, you know, and they say, okay, well, why are you going to go to work? Why is that valuable? And they'll say, well, something like, well, because I need money. And, well, why do you need money? Well, because the life I want to live requires money. Okay, so you go because you're trying to accomplish the life you want to live. Is that right? Yes. Okay, great. So your philosophy is that, in part, that if you want the life you want to live, you need money and you need to work. Is that right? Yeah. And they'll say, well, I guess. And I'll say, well, yes, that is part of your philosophy. And so that's why you work every day, is because you are fulfilling the philosophy that motivates your life. Yes.
And then ask yourself, is that fucking true?
And then there you go. And then there's the real kicker, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So that's part of it. That's a very small subset of that person's philosophy. Yeah. If you were to sit down with them for 10 hours, you could ask those sorts of questions, and you could derive hundreds of different beliefs that are motivating them every day. But that's a great example where you could actually take philosophy that you've read or whatever, and you can challenge that and say, okay, is that the best way to get to that goal? Right? Let's be more specific. When you say that it's the life you want to live, what does that mean? Right? They say, okay, well, I want to live in a nice house in a nice area and be.
Why do you want to live in a nice house?
Why do you want to live in a nice house?
Why do you want to live in a nice area? Yeah.
Now, of course, you can get trapped in the questioning thing, right? Which is what some people don't like about philosophy. They're like, it's all just a bunch of whys and no hows, you know. Yeah. But since we're talking about bearing the how, right? Yeah. I would say that any why, when implemented correctly, can lead to the best possible how. Because when you understand that all the things you do and your behaviors and your decisions and your thoughts, right, are motivated by this philosophy, right, then you should also understand that by challenging and refining that philosophy, you will live a better life. You know, the better your philosophy gets, the more clear it gets, the more self-contradiction you get rid of, right? The more false assumptions you get rid of, the more correct views and true beliefs you have, right? The more positivity you have, all of that, the better your life will be, because everything flows from thoughts. Yeah. Everything begins as a thought, you know, or at least an impulse up here, and you have to challenge those. Yeah. So that's number 3, is that number 1, you expose yourself to it. Number 2, you allow that to challenge you and change your worldview. But number 3, you intentionally, with that information and with those experiences, you can now intentionally craft a worldview that is conducive to the kind of life you want to live and the kind of person you want to be, right? And Ayn Rand basically says this. She says, option number 1, again, is to be intentional, right? And really choose what you want to believe and analyze your thoughts strategically, right? And develop a philosophy that is meaningful to you, all through intention, right? Or just let the world create it for you. You know, and she basically says, she's like, what happens when you let the world create it for you, most often, is you develop dumb ideas that you got from somebody else who also didn't think about their ideas, right? Dumb's a strange word. What I really mean is like incomplete, or, you know what I mean, harmful ideas. Yeah. You just have assumptions about the world.
Negative ideas.
Ideas. You just pick stuff up, right? this is why so often, this is just so funny that this just happened this week. Another thing, it's always fun at school. We have lots of adventures.
I can only imagine.
Oh, I mean, when you have 200 students, just the number of stories is just endless. But I'll just tell you one real quick. I had a student who we have 504 and IEP meetings. These are meetings for students with special needs is what they are, okay? Gotcha. So we had a meeting with a student with a special need. And I always said, this student's a great student, not very severe special need at all, just sort of needs an aid, just has sort of ADHD or whatever. And so I had a meeting with the mom and with everyone else. And without saying any names, I'll just say that the student, this kid, is so much like the mother. So much like the mother. In regards to negative behavior, probably also in regards to like positive behavior. But what I noticed was, the same negative behavior that kid has, the mom has.
Yeah.
The mom was in here taking notes and, was being real, just
like defensive.
It's real defensive and real angry. But everyone in that room is just there to help. Yeah. We're having this meeting just to make things better, right? Yeah. She's clearly mad about something. It was one class where she didn't get a certain computer login or something or whatever. And she felt like it was unfair treatment, But everyone in that room was just trying to help her. And I thought, you know what? This is so interesting how this kid will forever be affected by the way that her mom is, right? Yeah. And I hope to the gods that be, I hope to God, right, that this kid doesn't end up like that, at least in that way. This kid doesn't end up so negative and pessimistic.
Maybe he'll stumble across, or she will stumble across this podcast.
Hopefully, or hopefully. So this is my point. It's like I was saying earlier about thought patterns, right? That kid is growing up with that model. And until that kid, at some point in their life, right? Actually, I'll say it like this. Unless that kid, at some point in their life, challenges their ideas, challenges their assumptions about the world, and challenges their mother's assumptions about the world, right? Chances are that kid will become just like their mom. Yeah. At least in that way. And this is what they say in Christian circles. They call that like a generational curse.
Oh yeah,
that's a spiritual way of looking at it.
I actually wanted to talk to you. That's like a kind of we have 20 more minutes.
Oh great.
I wanted to bring this up, and that's like a perfect segue to it. You mentioned indoctrination versus education, but just kind of going right off of that.
Sure.
It seems like, that to me is like one of the fundamental fucking problems with just education, institutions of education, universities, high schools, public universities, is that teaching kids that, like what you just, like what do if you're having conversations like even close to this with your students, you're an amazing teacher, but most teachers do not ever discuss that kind of shit with their kids. They don't go deep into that kind of stuff. They don't teach them the importance of challenging their belief systems or challenging what the teacher says. That's one of the problems with, I know you mentioned it, indoctrination versus education. That's one of the biggest problems with education, right? People also say like they don't teach kids how to like critically think, problem solve. That's true too. Right. I'm not saying every teacher.
Yeah, that's
obviously,
like an average, right?
But like I know the school I went to was a public school. However many, there was like I think 1,000 kids in my class or something. And
did you find that there was a lot of that or no?
There was literally no
critical engagement,
nothing,
civil discourse,
nothing. And that's what the crazy thing about public schools is like. We got to do another podcast and go into this stuff deeper. But I grew up very, very poor, and my parents were both. I don't care talking about this shit, but both my parents were like addicted to drugs, in and out of prison my whole childhood. Very poor the whole time. There's a lot of negative belief patterns you form with that shit, and public schools just lump all these kids that live in $1 million houses with kids that live in trailers, lump them all together, and then teach them the shit the same way.
Right.
And you look back and realize like that's the problem with education. At least like public schools and stuff is one of the problems right. You lump everyone into one category and you somehow try to broaden the way that you teach them, whatever the shit it is that you teach them. But this kind of shit I feel like is, to me, it's like this is more important than anything else.
Dude, you're speaking my language right now. I mean, this is exactly how I feel about it. And one of the problems, I'll say it like this. What you mentioned is both a good thing and a bad thing in regards to public school bringing together all kinds of different people. It's bad in that what ends up happening is they end up generalizing everything so much just to reach everyone that you don't get into a lot of the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
You just get the real basic, shallow, superficial stuff, right? But I think that's not having enough faith in people. I think people can handle more than we realize. I think they can handle more challenge than we realize if it's presented in the right way.
Yeah, I think so too.
But the benefit of having people of all different types, just like a city or something, one of the benefits is you find that tolerance usually goes up because people can interact with other people that they may have never interacted with before in their life and may never interact with again, you know, at that level where you're sitting right next to someone who lives an opposite life from you.
Yeah.
What an awesome opportunity if as the teacher, you would create an environment.
That's the problem,
where
though.
these two students can interact more
That's
often.
the problem because most of the times a kid coming from like a very, very kind of upper class and then sitting next to a kid that lives in a trailer end up fucking, it's conflict.
It's conflict, and one
the environment isn't created the right way, you know?
Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
one will make judgments about the other and vice versa, and this person says, oh, they're just lazy and their family's dirty or whatever.
Exactly.
And that can
That's
become
the thing.
racist, and if it's a different race, and then this one says, well, they're just elitist and they're assholes and they're rich and he's lucky, and
there should be philosophy classes in fucking middle school, starting at like 7th grade.
This is one of my life missions. I really believe in the humanities as a core subject, at least one or many of the humanities, you know. When you say, I should clarify. When I say the humanities, there are different definitions of that. Some people also include art, which I would include, but I'm even specifically talking about like the social sciences.
Yeah.
Philosophy, psychology, sociology, anthropology, cognitive science, all of that, right? Imagine for a moment that every 6th grader has to take a sociology course where they learn about civility and they learn about what a good society looks like and how a good society functions, right? And not like you kind of sneak that into like 3 lessons in like a history class. I'm talking they take a full-on sociology course, right? And I think it should be opposite. Instead of teaching history and throwing in a little bit of sociology, you should teach sociology and throw in a little bit of history.
I would agree with that 100%.
Because honestly, the sociology, the study of how humans interact and move together in a society and work together, right, is so much more important in practical life, right? Because that leads to things like learning how to conflict resolve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but in our modern world, when you can look any fact up on your phone, knowing how to conflict resolve in real time is way more valuable than any date or understanding any war or any past political ideology, right? It is infinitely more important, and I don't see a good argument for the opposite.
I don't know if this is me just going insane, but it's just crazy how much I've been noticing just how like egotistical a lot of people are nowadays. Is that just me?
Well, I mean, no. I mean,
everywhere
I see
I go.
it, but I'm not sure. I'm not that aware of if it's changed that much. I'm not really sure. It might just be like
that. Just like I this facility that my where I work, we produce food, prepackage it, and everything.
Right.
We moved to a new facility in South LA, and it's a big ass fucking warehouse with like 60 different potential companies all like working together in this huge facility. It's kind of new, so right now there's not 60. There's, I don't know, maybe 20, maybe less than that. But every now and then there's like this shared space where you can do office work and stuff. And just the other day I was like doing some stuff on my computer, and this other company, I think it was one of the owners and one of the whatever, it was crazy how they were talking to each other.
Really?
I was like,
it's negative,
ego, the whole thing. Every single word, like every sentence they said, trying to resolve an issue was a jab at the other person's integrity. Like that's what every fucking line was.
How old are they, do you think?
They were like my age, 26, 27.
Oh, see, that really upsets me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, and that's not an oddity. I mean, what you're experiencing is probably very common.
Yeah.
But I would think, just imagine a society for a moment, right? Where instead of just teaching data and facts, you're teaching real life, real time skills. And I'm not the first. A lot of people have been saying this, right? That school needs to have more practical, hands-on, real time kind of stuff.
But what about the people that argue, well, that's the parents' job?
I'd say it takes a whole village to raise a child.
God, it does.
That's what I
It's
would
like,
say.
what if the parents are fucking drug addicts?
And what if the parents are dealing with their own issues?
Yeah.
Again,
Which they are.
I'm sorry, but I don't want the student that I mentioned earlier learning from her mom about how to conflict resolve because mom doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But guess what? Schools can figure that out.
Yeah, and
schools do know how to do it. We have all the research, right? We
Yeah.
have textbooks on sociology. We have textbooks on conflict resolution. You should have an entire class on conflict resolution. It's one of the most important things in all of life.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, you will not succeed.
Yeah.
Period. There is no exception. Well, I shouldn't say there's no exception. There are very few exceptions. Maybe you were raised rich or something. You don't have to work a day in your life. You never have to interact with people. But most people, if you can't conflict resolve, you are a step below people who can.
Yeah, you're a step below, and most likely
you
you'll
are
feel like
down.
shit a lot of the time.
Right. And so there's one example. I would say, imagine for a second that a sixth grader has to take a sociology course. And it doesn't have to be super deep. It can be basic. Just look, here is all the evidence as to how societies, not even the evidence, but here's the research on how a good society functions, right? And here's how you can play a role in that. Here's what it looks like to be a good citizen. Sometimes they have that. Say they have a couple citizen units they might have in like a history class, but I think the whole class should be devoted to that, right? And now imagine that a 10th grader, say, okay, so they took that in 6th grade, and now a few years go by. Say that in 10th grade, right? So now they're in high school, they're sophomores. They all have to take a class on philosophy. And this class, maybe it's philosophy and psychology. It's easy to combine both of them. And this class would include discussions about, what about like religion? What about politics? What about, and it doesn't necessarily indoctrinate one side or the other. It just says, here's all the arguments. Let's talk. Let's think.
That would have to be the key to it. It's not about the indoctrination. It's not indoctrination.
It's just, let's just present the information and then let's have Socratic debates. Let's do like civil discourse. Now, I'm not saying this stuff doesn't exist. I actually go to a really awesome school, I'm going to an awesome school, but what I meant to say is I work at an awesome school. We have a humanities magnet. It's really cool. We're a humanities magnet in high school. And so in the humanities program, it's a really good program. They talk about all this stuff. They talk about philosophy. They have a class on philosophy.
What age is it that you can?
High school.
Oh, it's high school.
So I think a lot of these classes are mostly for 10th to 12th graders. Yeah. That's awesome. They have a philosophy class they can take. I think they have a sociology class. They have a few different classes like that. I think they have a psychology class. They have an AP psychology class. So that's great, dude. That's awesome. I love that exists. I love that that's there. But I'll say two things about it. Number one, many of those teachers, though I love them, and I would say this to their face, with all due respect, are very one-sided in the way that they present information. It is not a balanced approach. They don't present, for example, the conservative viewpoint on a lot of ideas. It's very liberal, and I'm a liberal, and I'm saying that. That's how I know it's too liberal, But they often will bash religion, for example. They'll just make fun of the Bible, straight up, explicitly make fun of it. They'll bash the right, and they'll say anyone who supports Trump is a bigot and hateful, right? I mean,
that's probably doing more damage at that point.
I 100% agree. It is doing more damage. It's creating more division. It's getting these kids even more confused and fired up about the wrong things, quite frankly. And it's causing people to not really think critically, but to just think in one way. So it creates more identity politics, ideology, right? One-sided thinking. And what I found is that these people have no idea how to conflict resolve. Because part of conflict resolving, right? I'm not talking about the teachers. They're actually not too bad. But what I'm talking about is like the students. A lot of these students, I watch them get in conflicts and they're not very good at resolving it because they've been taught,
it's just about winning.
Right, it's about winning. It's about being on the right side, right? But as Jonathan Haidt says in his recent book, which if you haven't read it, it's so good, The Coddling of the American Mind.
I started reading it.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm going to probably just get the audiobook.
So yeah, that's what I did. But he says, one of the great untruths of our modern society is that life is a battle between good people and evil people. That is an untruth. That is not true.
Sometimes I really do have the thought that there is no evil.
I mean, this is, I think it's Solzhenitsyn or whatever. He said that, the line of... Right. So the line of good and evil...
It's in every human, right? Whatever, something like that.
It divides every human heart or whatever. So basically, everyone has some good, everyone has some evil. But it's not like there's an evil person and a good person. Everyone's got good and some evil in them, if you call it that. But the point is that some of these teachers and some teachers around the world, and it's even worse at college, right, are teaching as though If you're a Trump supporter, you're evil. I mean, there are college professors who will explicitly say that line to their class, and that is absolutely unacceptable. I have no patience for that.
Yeah, that's insane.
Because you're shutting down civil discourse. These are the same people that disinvite speakers from campus. Like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. Don't you want people to be exposed to other ideas and then critically analyze those ideas? Yeah. You can't critically analyze something that you don't allow yourself to be exposed to.
What do you think the deep, like, what is it about human beings in our society right now? What is like the deep thing that's causing this, the resistance of open discussion and like acceptance of all the shit that we talk about? What is this about? Like, I mean, we have 10 minutes, but like, this is a whole nother podcast.
I'll see if I can. I have an idea on this, and it's probably only a very small part of the answer.
Yeah.
But my idea is, I think the pathology of postmodernism is arising, and I think it's gone too far. I think postmodernism did its thing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even some of the 80s. I think it's still doing its thing, where it's all about subjective individual experience. People are being heard. There's more tolerance. All of that is part of the postmodern social agenda, which I actually think is good.
Yeah.
Those things are good, right?
But you think it's just going to the extreme?
I think it's gone too far, right? So now it's shifted from we should care about subjective experience to all that matters is subjective experience.
Right, that's okay.
And that's the shift, right? So there's a big difference between...
It's not even postmodernism
it's
at that point.
Postmodernism. I've heard people actually call it that, right? Where it's postmodern, where you're not even really talking about the fact that just subjective experiences are valid, right? And that people are different and that we should appreciate everyone. Everyone has value. Those are some core postmodern ideas, and they're great. But when that goes too far and it turns into, it doesn't matter what you meant, it matters what I thought you meant.
Yeah.
When my subjective experience not only overrides, but basically supplants, it basically like replaces your original intention, we have a problem.
Yeah,
we have a problem in communication and conflict resolution.
It's all ego.
And so I think that's part of it. I think it's fear is part of it. I think that there is a lot of fear on the left. There's a fear of like kind of neo-fascism and neo-Nazis. And
it's crazy because people on the left are turning into more, their traits are turning more into like Nazis than like a typical conservative.
I agree. I think Antifa is one of the scariest groups in America right now.
Yeah.
I think it's very dangerous. I mean, I would say the same about white supremacists though. So I'm definitely not advocating that. I would say they're both extremes of, I would say they're both pathologies of the extreme version of an ideology.
Yeah. And it's almost like they're so extreme that they're gonna just become the same fucking thing. I mean,
that's a great way of putting it. That's almost what looks like is happening.
Yeah.
They're doing the same kinds of things. They're violent with each other. They have no hope for civil discourse. They basically hate each other. But the problem is that this is where it gets really dicey. Is that now people like the Antifa group and all the extreme social justice warriors are not only fighting against the right. They're fighting against other people on the left who are not as extreme as them.
Yeah.
And they say, you're not as woke as me. You just don't get it like I do, right?
Well, that's a good thing because everyone's going to end up turning on them. And then, it's happening. Like,
I think that's happening.
It's really happening.
It's really happening. A lot of people on the left have a real, I would say like the moderate left, a lot of people on the moderate left have a real problem with the extreme because they're noticing they're shutting down free speech, they're shutting down civil discourse. And dude, you cannot learn without both perspectives.
Yeah. That's
not learning, that is indoctrination.
It's indoctrination.
And this is what I want to say about indoctrination. If you look up the definition of indoctrination, right? It says something like to teach an idea as though there are no other valid perspectives to that idea. It's basically what it is,
Really?
So,
that's the definition?
It's as simple as that. To teach an idea to someone and not present the opposite viewpoint of that idea.
God,
right?
I never thought about it like
It's
that.
as simple as that. So you could say, and I would say this is true, and some people don't like that I'm saying this. I would say that as a society, we all indoctrinate children. We all do, right? Therefore, not all indoctrination is bad, right? I want to teach my 4-year-old that it's bad to run into like a freeway.
Yeah.
It's always bad. There's never a time when it's good. There is no opposite case, right? It is always bad for you to do that. Don't ever do it, right? There's no reason to present the opposite case to a 4-year-old because they can't reason through it anyway.
Exactly.
So at some point, certain things like that, that's a very benign form of indoctrination. But I think that's good, right? Don't touch the hot stove when the flame is on. There's never an exception. There will never be a point in your life when you want to touch, as far as I can think of, where you actually want to touch a flame, you know? And so there are certain things, just behavioral things that you can teach young kids that seem like indoctrination, but are actually good. When you do that, though, with fully formed adults, or at least largely formed adults, or late adolescents, people who can reason through stuff, and you do it with topics that are not just behavioral safety, you do it with topics like politics and sociology, that becomes indoctrination. Yeah. Because they can think in other ways. They can analyze things. You don't have to treat them like children anymore, right? Yeah. Teach them the ideas. Teach them how to think about those ideas and analyze them. Yeah. Teach them how to have discussions with each other, like we were talking about. You got the one kid who's from one background, one kid from another. What an awesome opportunity to present something on the board, right? Have a question on the board right when they come in. For example, this just popped in my head. You could say, perception is reality. Discuss. Yeah. Right? Do you think that's true or not? And you could say, go. And you have 3 minutes to talk about it. I do this in my class all the time. I'll just write a question on the board, or I'll just throw some idea out there, and I'll say, okay, you have 2 minutes. I want you to talk about it with the person next to you.
Every teacher can do that.
It's easy. Right now. You could do it tomorrow. Yeah. You could do it tomorrow. If you're in a math class, you say, well, you can't do that in math. Sure you can. Math and statistics, I mean, stats is math.
Math is, dude,
you could talk about sociological statistics. Totally. There's so much to talk about there. Yeah. You could talk about where we're going in regards to AI. You could talk about the economy. Yeah. There's so many things you can talk about in math that are relevant and interesting. And you can start your class with that. And wouldn't that engage students more?
Yeah, of course.
Wouldn't that get people more involved? Yeah. So I would say there are many ways. I'd love to have a whole podcast. I have a whole list, actually, of things I've written out.
We're starting back up, so whenever the hell. Just start coming on fucking every month more. Start coming on however much you want to. Yeah. But
there's a whole list of things I think we need to do to change education for the better, And I do want to make one quick note, though. A lot of people kind of shit on Common Core. And maybe because like Common Core math is weird. I don't know that much about Common Core math, to be honest. But Common Core in regards to the humanities is actually quite good. The part of Common Core that talks about things like group work and stuff like that is actually really good. One of the things that it's gotten people doing is what I just mentioned, is having kids teach each other or talk to each other more often. Yeah. As opposed to just sit there and listen, write, and then like regurgitate information. They're talking, they're in small groups, they're in study groups, they're engaging with each other and they're having real discussions. A lot of that actually comes from Common Core. So that's good. So we are making progress. It's not to say that it's all
What is Common Core exactly?
Common Core, it's another set of standards you can think of. So how we have like California state standards in school, right? So each history class has a set of standards based on the grade they're in. They have to touch these topics, right? Bare minimum. It's sort of like the baseline, what you have to do. And so we've replaced a lot of the older standards from like the 70s or the 80s with Common Core, which is a new type of standard. But anyway, it's much more interactive, much more engaging, much more like discussion based. So there's a lot left to do. There's a lot more to be done in education. There's a lot more to be done in society and in the world. But I think in closing, because we probably got to close up soon, right?
Yeah. How do you want to wrap this up?
I would just say in closing that we shouldn't be afraid of things like philosophy and sociology. We should not be overwhelmed by them. We shouldn't think that it's too hard to get into because there's just too much information. There's a lot of information, but there's a lot of easy ways to get into it. Again, go to Philosophy Bites or Philosophy Zone podcast, 20, 30-minute segments. Look up Hidden Brain. It's a great podcast. Invisibilia. Great podcast. Most people would enjoy it. And it's radio style. So it's only 30, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour at the most.
Gotcha.
And there's music in the background, and there's interviews, and it's really, really good. It's engaging, and they talk about the mind. They talk about psychology. So what I'm saying is you can start there, And if you never get to Nietzsche, you never get to Nietzsche. I'm not saying you won't live a happy life without that. Yeah. I'm not saying that's impossible. I mean, Nietzsche wasn't the happiest person. You might live a happier life, But my point is that if you can just start somewhere with the humanities, just start somewhere in regards to critical thought and civil discourse, open yourself to new ideas, open yourself to new concepts that challenge your assumptions and challenge who you are as a person. And you'll become a better version of yourself. You can't refine something without a little bit of friction, without a little bit of heat, So be okay with the fire, be okay with the burn, and it's uncomfortable sometimes and it's overwhelming, but you'll always come out better if you've got the right intentions and you're reading the right things and you're talking to the right people, And so I would just say this applies both on an individual level, on a social level, right? And in schools, so in schools, it's like teachers, you can do this tomorrow. Like I was saying, just write a question on the board, have the students talk about it. Even if it only barely has to do with your subject, go for it. It's more important that these kids are talking and thinking than just memorizing information.
Yeah, 100%.
And then finally, I would just say, if we could just recap the 3 points again, I just think it's so good, because I was thinking about this week, and this has been just kind of ringing true for me, is that the process by which philosophy becomes so important, and not just philosophy, psychology, sociology, the humanities in general, right? The reason this is so important in the process is, number one, exposure. Expose yourself to new things, broaden your perspectives, challenge your thought patterns. And that's number two, is challenge. Allow that exposure, allow those new ideas to help you develop better ideas and get rid of bad ideas. Don't forget, everyone's got wrong beliefs. I guarantee you've got at least one wrong belief. Yeah. And you probably have at least 50 wrong beliefs that are hurting you, that are causing needless suffering. Figure out what they are, dig deeper, get into that. And once you fix that, once you address it, that's freedom, right?
Life. And don't forget, you're not alone in those beliefs, right?
Yeah, and talk to your friends. You know what I'm saying? It's like, have all the stuff we're talking about, we can do that on a daily basis with our best friends. Call each other, talk about these things. Be like, hey, I have this belief. What do you think about it?
And I'm going to fucking hold you to that.
Dude, call me.
Start calling you more.
Literally. Hunter and I will talk on the phone for hours. We meet. I talk to my friends, and Ryan we'll talk. I love it, dude. I love conversations. It's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for all of us, right? And then number three, once you expose yourself to these ideas in any form, once you allow them to challenge your paradigm, right, then you can begin to really craft intentionally with a strategy and a plan in mind. You can craft the best possible version of yourself. You can craft the best possible mind that you could have. You could craft, therefore, you could also craft the best possible life for yourself. And I would say that's why philosophy is important. We all love wisdom, and we love it for a reason. We love it because when professional thinkers give us insights that would have taken us our entire life to figure out, because it took them their entire life, right? We can implement that in ways that we would not be able to implement any of our own ideas. Yeah. They're just so much deeper. There's just so much more profound. They're just so much more well thought out. And I think there's so much more to do with that than what you can do by yourself. Yeah.
Well, Kris, this was an amazing one.
I like this one.
Thank you for being my guest after the hiatus. We got to do this more. So I'm going to hold you up. I'm going to hold you to calling you, and I'm going to hold you to
anytime.
Coming on again really soon to start thinking about all this stuff you want to talk about.
And let's go for a hike soon.
Hell yeah. Yeah, for sure.
The weather's nice.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Kris. Let's go make sure your car hasn't gotten a ticket.
Let's do that. Thank you.